So basically, we believed so much in Tommy that at the time when he came, he was injured because of he played 45 matches that year, 40, 42, 43 matches that year. So he was recovering from an injury, and at the time he was when we bought the club, he was the first signing we had, and he was the biggest transfer of the club at that time. So we had a lot of pressure, and also our doctors were like, he was like, the player is injured. You cannot sign this player that is injured. So our CEO had to go to the board and say, hey, I guarantee you can take this player. I guarantee. So this is actually was the first player that we are bringing to a new club. So this is how much confidence we had at Tommy at the time. It wasn't easy for him, also because at the time we just had taken over the club. We took the club fully in December 2017. And the new coaches, they didn't know Tommy and they didn't use Tommy. Tommy played 1 minute that season, that 6 months. But what is amazing about him is that Tommy is the type of player that he doesn't accept anything else that is not success. So he will know, and he's not lucky. Nothing for Tommy comes because he's lucky. He's just a hard-working player. You should see him here. He would have 2 trainings in the preseason. Sometimes we had 3 trainings a day, and Tommy would finish and still go to the gym and work. And then after that, he would go to the supermarket, buy his own food, take home and cook. This is we're talking about a 19 years old. I'm 41 and I don't do that yet. So that's how much Tommy, how amazing he was at the time when he was 19. Mm-hmm. So and then the second season when we restructured the club in the summer, we brought a new coach.
Just before you go on to that, just you say you were so convinced to sign him to the club at 19. Mm-hmm. What was it that convinced you that he was, that good and that worth it, that you could bring an injured player from Japan? Why were you so convinced of that?
It was the whole set. Like I told you, it's very difficult, even in these in modern football in these days, to find a player that has speed, size, and height. It has the speed and the technique and the mentality, the hard-working mentality. So we knew that he had the potential, but of course, until you bring the player and when you see, he has to fully adapt first. And this for Tommy, the first 6 months was the period that he needed a little bit of adaptation. But once he was fully adapted, in 6 months, he was already communicating in English. And that's how he is. He doesn't, the reason why we took him is mainly for these 3 reasons: the size, the mentality, the technique, and the speed. These 4 main things. And we knew the player because we come from the Japanese market. So we had also more information about, we knew Tommy better than any other club in Europe, let's put it that way, because we're coming from the same market.
So that first season was difficult because of injury and adjusting, but like I said, the second...
He came a little bit injured, and then we had to wait a little bit. I think it was 2-3 weeks until he fully recovered. And then after that, he played 1 minute that season. Despite he was fit to play. But then when we fully took over and when we restructured everything in July with a new coaching staff, then he took over and just had amazing games. And honestly, it took him only 1 season here, because you shouldn't count the first 6 months. He didn't even play, but it took him 1 full season to to explode here in Belgium.
I think he was player of the season that season, wasn't he?
He was player of the season for our supporters, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Yusuf can tell us a little bit more. He wasn't here at the time, but we can check it on that. So, but I think so.
I think
yeah. Then just to make sure that you have the right information, but I'm positive that he was.
Uh-huh. So away from the pitch, obviously he was fantastic on the pitch that season, but away from the pitch, could you see, you've already spoken about his mentality and how someone so young adapted the way he did. Is that, he always been this person who's willing to learn and wants to improve, you know, that you talked about the extra training sessions, that sort of thing. Has that always struck you about him? What's his personality?
Yes, I mean, it's very difficult to find players. Okay, you find a lot of dedicated players, but Tommy is, how do I say, is a little bit like, I don't want to make comparisons because it's two different players, but it's a little bit like the Cristiano Ronaldo mentality in terms of determination, in terms of working hard, in terms of eating healthy. If he has to prepare his own food, he'll prepare. And this, we're talking about the 19 years old that is coming straight from Japan, living alone, and he's doing all this alone. So it impressed me how determined he has always been.
Could you tell after that first season that you weren't going to have him for long? Could you see he was straight away?
Oh no, we knew it. We knew it after his first 3-4 months. We knew that it was going to be difficult. And of course, Belgium is a very interesting market for young players, where all the scouts come to look at young players, and he was in the radar of many different clubs already at that time.
So why Bologna? How did that move come around? I'm sure you said other clubs. Were there other options as well? Why Bologna?
I think the key there was two things. Tommy is always being very determined. He always knew what he wanted. So he knew by then that his first step was going to be, he wanted to go to Italy to learn from one of the best defensive how do I say, styles, where he's famous for Maldini, all those defensive players. So Tommy wanted to go to Italy first. And at that time, the other clubs, they're following him, but Bologna was already a step ahead because they had already done their homework earlier, and they came very early for Tomiyasu. And I think that was the key, because at the time the other clubs were still considering, still moving, and Bologna was the first one to come with an official offer from Italy at that time.
And I presume was that offer for Sint-Truiden, was that a very big offer? Was that a record signing or record transfer fee or something?
Yes, this was yes. To be honest, the CEO said at first when they asked how much do you think Tomiyasu's value was, and I don't remember when this was, but towards the end of the first season, towards maybe October, November, and he said it in the paper, 10 million. At that time, I was a little bit surprised. Not that I didn't believe he was worth it, but I think it was a bit too soon. But fair enough, he was already at that time worth that much, and was the biggest transfer record of the club, and one of the biggest for center back here in Belgium, if I'm not mistaken.
And did you follow him closely in Italy? Because I was speaking to people over there who are, very, very impressed. Have you stayed in touch? Did you watch his progress in?
We followed, of course, here. We also the tournament going with COVID and all these things. We try to follow as much as possible, but of course, we always knew that his progress. We knew that he was developing very well there. We tried to follow as much as possible. But to be honest, he didn't surprise us because he had already proven himself that he had the mentality. We knew that he would work very hard to be able to continue his development, and I think it would be the same now in England.
Did you know he was? Did you sort of know of his desire to move to the Premier League? He's spoken about it before, how he always wanted.
He mentioned that he's how do I say that, he wanted to go to Italy first, and then the next step would be the Premier League. But of course, this is a dream, but I think he followed up with his dream, and everything worked as he planned.
Well, I think it's only taken him 2 years to go from Italy to England. Does that, the pace, the speed of that move surprise you? Did you think he'd been more? Or?
Yes, the speed, of course, surprises us, because if you look, if I'm not mistaken, Tommy is 23 years old now. So yes, he came with when he was 19, almost 20, and then all of a sudden, but again, the mentality, his mentality is very, he's very determined. And so one thing that I learned is never to sell him short, because he'll keep surprising us.
You mentioned earlier, you were talking, you described him as a centre back. Obviously, he's come in as a right back at Arsenal. Where he can play in multiple positions. He's that talented. Where do you see him as his best position?
I think both. He can play both. He can play here. When he was here, he played as a center back, and then he did a very good job because he had the speed. He could also attack. But I think Tommy can play both. Depends on which pieces the coach has at the moment. But that's the good thing about Tommy is he can play in both positions almost the same. He's used to both positions there, so I think he can do well in both.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real baptism of fire really at the weekend, throwing in against Burnley for only a second game. Not going to get tested much more than that in terms of aerial.
Of course.
Duels. I don't think he didn't lose a single one. He won every aerial duel he had. So right back, centre back, it doesn't seem to matter. He can do it. He can do it. So sort of following on from that, do you think he's going to, you see no reason why he couldn't be a huge success in the Premier League? He seems to have all the attributes to be a star here.
I think he does. Of course, you also depend on other factors, how the team does, and of course, if the team does well, it's also it's very difficult to do well when the team is not doing well. So I think it's a combination of other factors as well. But just speaking purely about Tommy, I think he has all the attributes to keep developing into an even better player.
I guess there's quite a lot of pride at your club at the moment, seeing how he's doing and the sort of progress he's making.
Yes, of course. We all, from the management all the way to the greenkeepers and everyone in the club, we really feel pride because he was here with us, and I think all of us helped a little bit in his development, and we are very proud to see him going. That's why we work in this business. So.
Just lastly on, I mean, how good do you think he can go on to be? Still so young, 23 years old. We talked about the attributes he's got and his ability on the ball, his mentality. I mean, there's still so much room for improvement that he's got so much potential. But look, how good can he be, do you think?
No, I think Tommy, he's the type of player that he's never satisfied. He will always continue to keep working hard, to keep developing himself even more. I think the biggest challenges in the Premier League, especially playing on the side, is the players that you're going to play against. You're going to play against the best wingers probably in the world. So it's a very fast-paced league. So adaptation, I think he'll need a little bit of time to adapt. But again, Tommy learned very quickly, and it's surprisingly how he has already done in these 2 games. So maybe he doesn't even need any more time to adapt. But I think the speed of the league and everything, he needs to adapt a little bit to that coming from the Italian league. But I think he whatever he needs to improve, he already knows, and he's already working on it after the trainings. I'm sure if you ask the head coach, if you ask the staff, he's always working after training.
Lovely, Andre. Thank you very much. Pleasure to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sure. If there's anything else I can do to help, it will be a pleasure.